you know that SeaWorld owns about 24 orcas in the 3 parks that they have in the US today? This may not seem a lot, but compared to the orca to a human, it's a big difference. An orca can weigh up to 10 tons and about 30 feet long. When I was little, I went to SeaWorld, and my favorite part was the splash zone. Little did I know that the orcas really don't do this because they want to. They're only doing this for food. Although a lot of people like orcas in the parks because of the entertainment and the education. But the thing is the amount of damage it does to them physically and mentally outweighs this. In the next few minutes, I will explain why this is harmful to the orcas and what we should do about it. The first thing I will talk about is the damage done from separation of the family. In the movie Blackfish, they talk about capturing some orcas in the beginning. The orcas are very intelligent, and they've had this happen before, so they knew that they were in trouble. They basically had a plan against the humans. Basically, the mothers and the calves would go under the water one way, and then the males would show their dorsal fins above the water and go the opposite direction so that the boats would follow them. They would have outsmarted the humans, but they had a helicopter above them, and then they saw them and told the boats that they were going the wrong way. When the boats were loading up the calves, the pods or the families stuck around, and they were screeching in sorrow for their calves. This is very emotionally damaging to the whales and the calves. Imagine your family getting taken away from you and you not being able to do anything about it. The next example of separation of family would be not into the wild, but in the parks itself. Another thing from Blackfish is a calf named Kalina. She is the first Shamu, and she was separated from her mother at age 2. She was not only taken to a different park, but also on the other side of the country. It was very, very clear that her mother was extremely grieving because she even tried to use long-distance sound waves to try to get a hold of her calf. SeaWorld had never ever heard of these long-distance sound waves before from an orca either. So hearing this, it's very obvious that she was devastated that her calf was gone. Now that I've talked about the separation of family harms, now I'm going to talk about the physical harm to the body. Sam Simpson from Blackfish says, "We're going to be thought of as barbarians when people look back and see that we put orcas in concrete bathtubs." If you really think about it, compared to the size and where they were supposed to be living in, which is the ocean, they really are living in bathtubs. Because of the tight spaces, they also get into fights and injure a lot of people. Stated on the Orca Home webpage, they say that there's 41 injuries to humans. 4 of these are deaths at SeaWorld. It is obvious that they do this because of in captivity, because in the wild there's only 1 recorded injury. And even though you can't record all the injuries in the wild, there are no deaths. And that's a big difference. And orcas just do not act the same, with the same harmful actions in the wild than they do in captivity. The next thing for physical harm is the collapsed dorsal fin. In Blackfish, they say less than 1% of the orcas in the wild have their dorsal fins collapse. In SeaWorld, about 100% of the males have the collapsed dorsal fins while living in the parks. That is the collapsed dorsal fin. And this guy, his name is Takilium. And he is actually the one that killed a human during a show. After talking about the physical harms, now I'm going to talk about the environmental issue. The website SeaWorld of Hurt explains, in captivity, orcas are forced to live with orcas from other family units that don't speak the same language as them. And they are often constantly moved between facilities and for breeding and performances. If you think about it, I mean, how hard would that be to live with somebody that you don't even speak the same language with? Because of this, they get into a lot of fights with each other. In the wild, if you got into a fight, then they could just run away and hide. But here, they are stuck in the tank, and they can't get away. Also, because of this, a lot of the orcas have actually died from brutal beatings from each other. The next thing is, now that we've talked about all the bad things, now let's talk about what we should do about these problems. Basically, we all should know that the first solution would be to just not capture them and let them into the wild. But the thing is the whales that are already in the park, we would have to watch them because they don't know how to live in the wild anymore. And in return, we would have to help them. As Daniel Walton said in the journal Freewheeling, orcas at SeaWorld are now captive bred, and their situation is far removed from what their habitat and social dynamics for which they have evolved from. This proves that they are just living in places that they should not be living in, and that because they are living in those places, they've evolved from where they should be, which is the wild. The only problem with letting them free is also that a lot of people will not want this to happen. SeaWorld in the CNN interview says more than 11 million people each year have experienced killer whales from going just to their parks. Knowing this, lots of people just won't want to get rid of the orcas because they love the entertainment and the education it comes to them. Now, the second solution, in my opinion, would be to make the environmental homes differently. Basically, you could just shift the show to the ocean and, like on the coast for the ocean, and then set a net out there to make sure the orcas don't escape. And then this would provide plenty of room for them to do whatever they want, run and hide if they ever need to, have their families stay around, and they would be in a natural environment like they would be in the wild. Now that I've talked about the changes in how to change these problems, now the main point is to make sure that these orca whales are not suffering the way they are right now in captivity. Overall, captivity, it tears the family apart, harms both the orcas and humans, and they also don't live in their natural environment. We should not keep them held captive the way they are in parks today. All these facts outweigh why people like orcas in SeaWorld or any other parks today. So basically, we should change their environmental habitat so that way we can better the orcas.